So I'm going to switch out my old carbide knives here and put in the Shelix spiral cutter head on my DW735. You can see I'm already partway through here. It came with these three parts and then the spiral cutter head. This key right here is found in the top of the machine, stuck down in here. Pull it out and it removes all these top 4 screws. That's your first step, and then you just lift this metal plate off. And the next step is just, you'll see on the inside there's 3 of these thumb screws. You just turn by your hand and take that off. It's just a dust hood, I guess. Then part I ran into next was removing these screws from the plate here, and you got to really pop it hard with the tool here to get it started. And then I used a extension bit, you see right here on my drill, with the little hex head in the end there that fit that screw. And once I popped every one by hand, then I went ahead and removed it. What I ran into the problem was removing the little lock here, which every time, oops, there's a lock that sits right in here, and every time you spin it you got to lift it up and then spin it again. But they did warn me that you could strip out the screw. It's got some blue lock thread applied to it to make it kind of sit in there tight. And the first one I was pushing in really hard, but it still stripped out on me. The second one, no problem. I pushed in really hard and popped it. So when it stripped out, what I did is I took my Dremel right here with the cutoff wheel and cut a single slice through it, and then used a really big screwdriver right here to go ahead and remove that screw after I'd taken the Dremel and cut a new slot in it. I was prepared to cut the whole head of the screw off with a Dremel cutoff tool if I had to. So that's where we're at right now, and then I'll add some more to this as we go. But yeah, do put really hard pressure pushing in against that screw when you pop it, as hard as you possibly can. The screw is not, the metal must not be very good. They probably kind of knew that it would strip out ahead of time. But I had a pretty tight fitting Phillips head, which is kind of an intermediate size Phillips head that goes in there, intermediate to small I would say. But if that happens, yeah, just get your Dremel out, cut off wheel, and be careful, probably prevent it and save you some time. Next, I removed the handle, again using this piece that came with the machine off the top. And this handle also fits the 4 screws on this cover right here. Again, I'm using a drill for that to remove these, just to make it faster. It's magnetized, as you can see there, which helped on the inside when I took the blades off too. Just magnetize the end of it. If you have a little magnetic swipe to magnetize a little block, you can do that. So took this off, and now we get to some of the inside parts. The next step is to remove this screw from the tensioner arm right here, and this is a Phillips head again, and they warned about not stripping it. I was very careful, pushed in really hard, and was able to pop that without any problem compared to the lever arm. Now lever arm, they told you in the instructions, be careful to grab the spring on the back. It's attached pretty well. It's got a nub through there that it didn't come off or anything. This one I'm not too worried about having to make a new slot in there, because this is going to be discarded anyway. We're not going to use this when we put the Shelix cutter head in. I guess for future use, if you ever want to put your regular blades back in, you could save that. You could replace the screw easy enough though. For the next part, I'm removing the screws here. I noticed one of the videos that said you had to use a different size Allen wrench, but I guess I have a different model or different year, because this tool that comes with the machine seems to fit it quite well. So, and then next I'm just going to pull these off. Apparently you pull it all together, sprockets and everything, just get behind it and pull it off. I had to wiggle the sprockets a little bit to get them off. I was wearing gloves at the time, so I didn't get any grease on me. So I'm getting ready to remove this nut here, and I read on or watched the other videos where they used a 23mm socket in a breaker bar, which I've got. What I don't have is a wrench that fits down in here to stabilize this nut so I can turn the other side. In my wrench set, my metrics don't go big enough. Biggest metric I have is about 16mm. Supposedly need a 19mm wrench to go in there. But I'm going to try something maybe a little simpler. I've got a block of wood here. You can kind of rotate around with your hand here a little bit. This triangular shaft here. And the block of wood's about 7/8 inch, but I didn't like cut it for that. I just happened to have a spare one here. And I dropped that in there so it can't rotate, and we'll see if that works. Boy, that really came off really easy. I mean, it took, I'm not even sure I really needed this breaker bar. I probably could have done that with a regular wrench. I mean, I just barely put any pressure and it popped right real easy. The wood stick in here worked great. I mean, it stabilized it from turning, and you don't need a wrench to go in there to do that. To get the wheel off here, it took a little tugging back and forth. I did leave the belt on until I got it all the way off. It took a little tugging, but it's doable. You just kind of get behind it and try to rotate different sides around the clock there at different angles until you pop it off and get a little more assertive and pull it all at once, and it just comes straight off. Then there's a little bitty key right here. Let's see if I can show you the key. Yeah, there's a little key that sits right in this little notch. I don't know if you can see this notch. Let's see, right here. There's a little notch up there, and there's this little piece, which is, I'm seeing it there. Okay, it's right here. This little piece right here. It sits right in this little notch up here. We call it a key. And I popped that out with just using a pair of pliers here. Just grab the top. It popped pretty easy out of there. Just grabbed the sides of it there and took it straight out. Don't want to lose that. I'm gonna put it together with the other pieces. There is a little washer to remove here too. And then next I'm gonna do the internal snap ring, and I bought this pair of snap ring pliers. They call them vice grip. It does say for snap rings on the label here. Just bought it at the big box store. And so I'm going to use that to get this internal snap ring off, pull the two edges together, and then pop it out. So as far as getting this snap ring off from the inside here, it was just as difficult as Chris Wong's video, or more so for me. The problem is you're trying to push it in and pull it out at the same time. If you pull it out, it slips out of the hole here, and your ends are straight in. So if you're going to try to pull out, of course the snap ring is going to pop off. So it's just, you're pulling two different directions. I tried to bend my prongs in a metal vise to angle them out, and as you can see, I broke one off. I noticed I'd had two of these that came with the set that were similar, so after breaking the first one off, bending them different directions, I decided I'd just go straight in. How did I get it? I'm not even sure. I mean, I just pushed really hard in and really hard together, and finally one time it just clicked out. Maybe it's because I'd opened and closed it so many times the metal was starting to be a little more pliable. But yeah, it took a long time. Chris Wong, you're right about that snap ring. There must be a better way. You're just going in two directions. If you're pulling straight out, of course the prongs are going to come off, and you've got to pull it out to get it out. So I think I finally just got it so close together. That might be the key, is it wants to slide left and right, is just pushing really hard and get so close together that when it did pop, it popped out when it came off the prongs. So I got lucky maybe. I'm laying out my pieces in order of removing them, so I'm going to go up like a U, and then when I come back I'll go back like a U there. So I know that the things like this washer goes before underneath the pulley arm or wheel here. How did I get that snap ring off? I think in retrospect it was the one time I squeezed this the tightest and got these two ends just about touching. It was tighter than all the other times, plus I tried to steady my hand. What happened usually when you get real close to the very end, your hand would jerk a little bit. The spring would just pull it one way or the other, and then the tool would pop out. So I tried to steady it in one area and squeeze as hard as I could. So it could be a function of how long your arm is, the lever arm action here on the grip here, the snap ring removal pliers. Maybe one with a bigger arm, or a better one might work better, give you more leverage. But that, I think in retrospect, that's the final time I got it out, was I pushed these just about touching these two pieces here so tight and steadied my arm, because always last minute would jerk a little bit and pop out. So you can try that and see. I think that's how I got it out. Next, I'm going to go ahead and remove these screws here. The Torx head tool that comes with the kit could also remove them, but I'm just going to use the bit I've got in my drill here. So that's off. Now, not too dusty. I did buy some grease to grease my chain. It's synthetic grease. You got it at the hardware store. And I'm going to do that when I start putting things back on. So here's the gearbox, and this has some external spring clamps, so I'm going to switch my pliers over. So I'm going to take and reverse the snap ring vice grip by pushing in here. There's a little spring in there. I don't know if you can see that. And popping this piece up here in the back and then pulling it through. Taking that one off. I could just use this one on the other side, but I'm going to try the curved one here. Push through these. Got little pegs there. Alright, that's through. I guess this probably doesn't matter which side it goes through, but let's see, I don't want to get in the way. Push that back through. It's got a little pivot here. I don't know if you can see that. It just slides through. So now it separates, which is what I want. I'll go after these little spring clamps. Awkward area here. Oh, that's not working too good, is it? Popped right off there, didn't it? Not tight enough. Okay, so I just now, because they were popping off, I took them from facing like this, curling like this, to like this, and put this on this side. Seems to be staying on now. See if we can get these snap rings off here. Oh man. Got one off. That's good. I'll go for the other one. Anyway, I'll just struggle with this off camera for a minute. Okay, I thought about going back to just a straight pliers, but the key is just making sure it's seated in the little hole of the snap ring. For some reason I had trouble with the bottom on there more than the top. This bottom hole here. It's part way off right now. Just get them in the holes. Be key. There we go. All right, got it. It's a little bit twisty sideways. That's probably why it pops out. So anyway, I've got those two. All right. So next, I'm going to take this chain off, but I want to take the tension off it before I remove it. So I'm going to take the tensioner arm spring off and see how hard these are to get off here. Oh, they came right off. That's the easy part so far. All right. Doesn't look like this 3 screws I need to remove next, or here, here, and here, I guess. Doesn't look like they're going to fit with that Torx head bit, so I'm going to need to get an Allen wrench for that. When I removed that, I did notice that there was a washer back behind the one on the right here. I don't know if you can see it was kind of sticking there because all the grease right there, it goes on underneath that. So I need to make sure I do that on the reverse. Okay, so to remove the 3 screws for the gearbox, it is a 5mm Allen wrench. I saw it on the markings on the side that it's 5mm. So here we go. That one's broken. That one's broken. Seal's broken. Wasn't very hard. So I'll just take these out. Kind of really long, surprisingly long, with just a small thread. So I guess that's to get past the depth of the gearbox there and hit the receiving socket there. Number 2 long. Number 3 long removed. 5mm Allen wrench. It's much too big for the Torx head. Don't remove that one. I guess that one doesn't need to come out. This should pull out. Should is the key word, right? I pulled out easy. Twist it to the side. Don't take it all the way out. Get it out of the way. I'm thinking I might deviate from the plan here and remove this while it's still, remove the head off the gear. So I don't pound on it. I'm not too hot on pounding on anything that I'm going to reuse for the next piece. So I'm going to drop the stick of wood back in there so the thing can't turn, see if that works. Okay, so I got a 6mm ratchet wrench extension out of my kit here, and that seems to fit this. I dropped the board in long ways so it can't turn, and I'm just removing this, which seems to have popped pretty easy. I notice there's an internal snap ring in there. I guess maybe I can leave that since I'm going to pound it out from the opposite end and then pound it back in from the opposite end. So that came out easy enough. And then I'm going to have to either get a piece of wood or a socket to pound that back through the other side. But there is an internal snap ring in here. I wasn't expecting that. Never expect the snap ring. So here's a close-up of that internal snap ring that's in there. I took it off. This is the board I put on the inside here just to keep it from rotating. It didn't fit very tight. I guess it doesn't have to, but I was able to break the screw. And the second part, when I started to turn it, I put my hand in there a little bit, but because this slipped up a little. But it's maybe too wide a board for this part. It seemed to work better on the other side when I took it off the first time, but it doesn't matter. Again, it kept it from turning, and I was able to do it pretty easy. These things aren't in tight, nothing like the snap rings. Okay, I got a 3/4 inch socket that just fits right inside that internal snap ring so I don't hit the snap ring. And I'm going to try to bang it out with that. If it doesn't work, I mean, at least I'm trying different things to help out people in the future that are looking at this. Hopefully I don't hit my fingers. I might have to get a wrench to. I don't want to hit the spring, internal spring again. Do not want that. Maybe a longer board might be a little bit better if I could get in there and pound it. Might have to switch it. Yeah, I think I'm hitting more pressure on the bottom edge there, so I'm going to try maybe find a piece of wood. We'll see. Okay, I found a longer 3/4 inch socket in my kit. That'll allow me to get my hand in there a little better to hold it. Kind of confined by this and this, the gearbox, and you know, when I'm making sure I don't hit that snap ring. Maybe that's why people leave the gear on there, so they get a little further extension, but might have to switch to something that slides out further. It's just these are restricting me from getting in there and getting a good blow at it, or I might get a bigger hammer. Okay, what I decided was that maybe that socket was too close to that internal snap ring and I didn't want to hit it, and maybe that's the reason people leave the gear on there. So I put the gear back on there and got a piece of maple here, and I switched this hammer out for a sledgehammer, and that works. I've got it almost all the way through the opening now. It's about to pop through there. There, it's through now. I don't know if you can see it, but it dropped down in there and hit the gear a little bit. So much for the socket experiment. Maybe because I'd already removed it once, I didn't really need to grind down a wrench to put in this slot, like create this video. This gentleman makes an excellent video on this, much more detailed and better than mine. But I was able to just put the socket wrench on there and just turn it with holding it in my hand without having to put a wrench on there by a 19mm wrench. Actually, I do have a 19mm wrench now. It cost me 25 bucks at Ace Hardware. I could have got it for 10 at Lowe's, but I'm doing it without it. So for other people, if they don't want to buy one, you can see that you can do it without it. Haven't used it yet. Next step, I am going to leave the plastic on because I don't want to get the cutter head scratching anything as I go in. I'm sliding it down a little bit to the end. So on this, mine did come with the bearings. One bearing you'll notice is smaller, one's bigger, and the smaller one goes in. We're going in from the pulley side. I've switched the camera around to the opposite side now, and see how hard it is to get into the back in seated where it was before. Yeah, I definitely want to leave that plastic on, I think. Although, you know what? It's a tight fit in there. What is going on wrong? Got to kind of turn it maybe as we go. There we go. Now I'm not really having to turn it. Kind of feed it in, get it close to the other end. Hopefully I can get it close enough I can remove the set it up in there and remove the plastic a little bit. I've seen in the other videos they use a string to lift this in. I think I'm going to need to do that because as I'm getting in closer here, there's no real way to lift it up and it's starting to drop down. So yeah, I'm going to wrap a little string around the end of there so I can use it to kind of get it back up there. Okay, what did I learn from this step? Put the string on first, because I had to drop it down one side and getting it back up the other side required use of this tool to grab the string and pull it back up to the other side. If I'd put it on ahead of time, maybe held on to it as I went in. I did use the plastic for a little while, grabbing the two edges and pulling up on it to guide it toward it, but that didn't work out too great toward the end, so I had to put the string on there. I did get it slightly seated in there. I did have to pound fairly hard on the opposite end here with the dead blow mallet here, and I got it in there and took the plastic off. The plastic came off real easy. Probably would leave the plastic on until you get it through there, try to prevent from dulling the cutter heads. I'm hoping that this one on the end here didn't hit the opening here and scratch it up or anything, either way, the machine or the cutter head. But I don't think so. So far it seems okay. So I'm getting ready to probably switch over and use a piece of wood or something to pound the rest of this in. When pounding the Helix cutter head back in, I started out with just a lighter mallet, and then I switched over, once I had it seated in the other end, to a mahogany block here, which kind of got beat up on the end, and I used a sledge. It took that, and it took multiple hits to kind of slowly advance it. Don't worry, it doesn't quickly advance. I advanced until I thought I was going to get close. There's a ring in here, internal snap ring, that I never took out on this other side, the gearbox side, and I advanced until I got pretty close to that. I noticed it's a little short on the other side of the, I'm thinking the cutter head might be a little, not quite as long, because I can see a groove where that ring is going to be seated, the snap ring, and it looks like I'm a little further in. I looked at the inside here, the down here at this silver piece, till I had it a little bit buried on the bearing, a little bit in there. Next step, took this half-inch piece of MDF to use in my, to kind of just wedge in here for my cutter head. You don't need a wrench that way, because I left the gear off the end of it until after I'd already pounded in. And I put the gear on and just used the little, I think it's a 6mm ratchet wrench, and slid that board in there and then just tightened it down. That way you don't need the 19mm wrench that's in the other video. So I was able to get that on really tight. I mean, I just kind of stabled that with one hand and then turned with the other hand. You can get as tight as you want. It locks in that way. Getting ready to put the gearbox on next. When I was pounding from the other end, the pulley side, the whole machine started moving toward me. So what I did is I just clamped a bar across here with 2 clamps to keep it from pushing the whole machine as I pounded it in. This gearbox has got some oil or something leaked out of there onto my workbench at one point. When you put it back in, you can actually watch it on the inside. There's a little slot that you can see. You can tell when it pops in. There's a little rod that goes into a little opening there. Haven't quite got it yet. This changes from the finishing to the dimensioning the 2 gears. And I noticed just now when I was sliding it in, I had to kind of wiggle the finishing 1-2 button here between finishing and dimensioning. I've got it on dimensioning right now, but I had to wiggle that a little bit to get it set in there, but it wasn't that hard. Now I'm going to put the screws back in. Just the really long 3 screws here. And instead of using the Torx wrench, I've got the Allen head bit here on the... Oh, got the wrong one apparently. Mistake. So I went ahead and tightened these 3 with a 5mm Allen wrench. I actually started to tighten this one and said, why is it so tight? And then loosen it and then tighten again. Figured out it wasn't one of the three that you tighten. It was the one that has a spring on there, the tensioner lever. So next, this washer that came off the right side here goes on. And then I'm going to put these gears on. They don't seem to have a back and front, although I could see a little bit of the washer grease there, so I'm thinking that's the back. So I'm going to go ahead and put that on there. Not that it matters. I don't really see a difference there between the two. Okay, there's a little slot I'm seeing right here. It has to go in the slot on the gear level. So I'll try to get that in first. And of course it's not going easy. Ah, there we go. And there's another little slot. I might have to turn this one a little bit. Or a lot. Let's see, this should, oh boy, I got it below the tensioner. There we go. Now, let's see if this can turn here. Oh, that roller bar is not turning. So I might have to take that out. Slot's not lining up. So let's see. Maybe if I turn this. Nope, that doesn't turn either. That's the gear. Alright, so let me work on this a minute. Take this out. Put it in here. And try to put the chain on it. Probably not going to work. Now you got to put the star in first, but I can take it out. Put it in here. So it's facing up on this slot. I don't know if you can see what I'm getting. There's a little notch that comes down here that has to fit into the little notch here on one of the roller bars, I guess. There we go. That's pretty close. Not quite, but close. Didn't know that was going to be such a pain. Would have kept it lined up the way I took it off. I wonder what changed on me. I wonder what rolled. It shouldn't have changed, I wouldn't think. Well, at least you get to see other people struggle too, but I don't want to burn too much camera time, so I'm going to take it off for a minute and mess with it so the camera's not still going. So what I found out is I could take this wheel out of the chain, stick it on the roller bar, and then rotate the roller bar till I could get it lined up. So I was able to use that almost like a wrench or torque to get a little torque on that and roll it and set it up so I could line it up and get it in there. I had to push back on these a little bit, the wheels, to show where the snap ring is going to fit, the little groove there. This one was pushed out too far, so I just popped it back in. It was pretty easy. And now I guess these are the external snap rings, so they're going to spread. I've got the curved snap ring. We'll see if that works. This one's a little bit bent. I'm going to bend it back. Came off a little bent, I guess. Or bent it when it was coming off. So it should be the tougher one. The other one's a little straighter. Let's see if I can get that in there. Spread it really far. Snapped in, didn't quite go in because of the bend. Seems a little loose too. That's not good. Maybe it's loose because it's not in there, or maybe it's loose because I separated it too much. Nah, it's just because it's bent. I have to flatten that sucker out. I think I'm going to take it to a metal vise or something and flatten it out. It's kind of, I don't know if you can see it, but it's, let's see on the end, it's a little bit warped, one end higher than the other. It's not very good background, is it? Yeah, it's a little bit bent there, the two ends, so I'm going to try to straighten them out. It looked like half of it was in the snap ring. Well, the snap ring that was a little bit twisted and a little bit separated was a real pain. I put the better one on the right side here, and it fit right in there nice. It's easy to put on. This one, I was a little worried about it coming off. It seemed a little loose. I actually changed the vice grips to pull it together there, and I tried again bending it back, try to get it in the same plane. It seems a little more separated than the other one, and it seems like the edge is a little bit too loose for my liking, but anyway, it doesn't come off when I pull on it, and it's just a roller, I guess, so it should work. Put the tensioning spring back on here on the lever arm so it can put a little tension on there. I'm getting ready to put the cover back on. You don't need to see me do that. You took it off. 1, 2, third screws on the gearbox. So, you know, the snap ring there, it seemed a little loose. Maybe I stretched it too much when I took it off. Maybe if you're doing it, you might kind of be careful how far you spread when you're taking off, and just spread just enough to get it off. Maybe I overdid it and overstretched the metal. But it's still a little bit one end. Seems like it's better now. I kind of played with it, and like I said, I've switched my vice grips over and closed for a while. I took it and bent it a little bit more back and forth to try to get it in the same plane. Had to overbend it to get it to snap back to the same plane for the two ends. But yeah, that snap ring, you know, it's not the greatest fit, not the tightest fit there, but seems to hold it. Well, I guess we'll find out one day when we're running it and roller quits working. Hopefully not. I almost took put the cover back on, forgetting to lube back the chain. I've got this Super Lube synthetic grease. I don't know if it's the right application or not, but it seems like it should work. So I'm gonna put a little bit and then turn the chain around a little bit, and just keep it a little oiled up there. Okay, I'm back over to the pulley side here. Switch the machine around. The first step, I'm going to put the internal snap ring back on. I've allotted the rest of the day to do this one snap ring, time-wise. Actually, just kidding. I'm using the straight pliers now. Get away from the curved ones for the internal one. Use the curved ones for the external. I can see the slot inside here, the little rim, and again, it seems a little set back from the original cutter head. Maybe this one's a little shorter, or maybe I drove it in a little further. I'm not sure. Alright, so probably ought to get a screwdriver to help push in, or just use my torque wrench. Boy, that's a pretty big compression when I look at the outside versus the inside. So we'll see how this goes here. Try to get it loaded on there. Maybe just get it close first.
one side's in. Probably ought to put the outside in on. Start here. This is going to be a pretty boring video, I got a feeling. So anyway, I'm going to struggle with this off camera for a little while. Let's see. Doesn't seem to be gripping very well. It's popping right out. And there we go. Whoops. Alright, looks like it's going to be a struggle. Okay, actually wasn't as bad as I thought. I kind of got it in a position for my hand where the two rings were kind of comfortable. Pushed in really hard, kept good pressure on it, and used a screwdriver to push the back in, and it popped in. It only took about 2 or 3 minutes. I was struggling with the snap ring. I just didn't want to leave it on camera because it could have been a lot longer. But I had to really push in hard with the vice grip snap ring pliers. And at first it popped in one side, the top side, and then but it was half in and it wasn't coming out after that. The rest of it was pretty easy. So again, it wasn't as tough as getting it out. It's seated in the ring now. I'll spin it around a little bit just to be sure. Oh, it's not spinning anywhere. The thing's in there tight. Alright, so that should work. Okay, I screwed up the first time when I was putting it back together because I didn't pay attention enough. And plus there's a misleading video on the internet doing this. It's actually in the comments that they put the spacer out of order. There's a couple parts here that have to go in order. This thing, I think the parts manual calls it a bushing. Looks like a washer to me. It's a little thicker than a washing. This little thing is the key. Here's a bolt. Now this is the order they go. This goes on arbor first. Doesn't matter snap ring or not because it sits inside the snap ring. So snap ring's already in, let's say. But again, it's not going to hit the snap ring. It goes on there first. That little washer, bushing, whatever you want to call it, goes on there first. I think in one of the other videos they have it on the outside here. And as far as I can tell, it actually goes on first, then the key goes on second. This little key goes in there. Although, you know, when you read it, sometimes it sounds like the bushing goes between the key and the pulley wheel, or whatever this is called. But anyway, it's kind of important to get it in the right order. And I did not get it in the right order the first time. Okay, so I checked my reference again. That washer, they also call it a bushing, goes first, then the little key, then the pulley wheel slides on next. One thing you should do before you start it up is put that belt back on there and make sure that the arbor spins freely. I did not do that, and now I may have burned out my motor. We're going to see it pop the breaker on the machine a few times and then wouldn't reset after that. So I'm going to see if we're able to reset now, or if the motor's toast because the arbor wouldn't turn. I don't know why the arbor wouldn't turn yet. It's turning right now. At first I thought it was the gearbox, but we'll figure it out. There's another thing about this belt. When I took it off, I didn't see how far in or out it was on the wheel. I mean, it could be 1 or 2 ridges outside the metal, or one inside. I put it one inside this time. I think when I first ran it and had the problem, it was one outside. So maybe you ought to look at it real close before you take it off to see how far in or out it is. In order to get it on there, I put the wheel on first, then I got one edge on there, and then I just kept pushing up in this area and feeding it, pushing real hard on the part feeding into the wheel and turning it. No, I don't want to keep pushing it there. I'm going to get it too far over. But anyway, I would push it over really far and then just feed a little bit at a time and just slowly turn it until I got all the way on there. Looks like it's seated better. Again, make sure your arbor turns freely. I mean, it seems like it's turning freely. Doesn't seem like too much resistance. But do that before you turn your machine on for the first time. I went ahead and took this little screen off here. In order to do that, I loosened this screw here, and then I had to take a screwdriver in this end over here and pop the little tab out. I don't know if you can see that tab there. It's a pretty long tab. So I wanted to look at the pulley up in here. and the belt was a little bit off one or two ridges. I don't know if I did that when I was feeding it on the other side, but it seemed like it was sticking out toward me, so I went ahead and pushed that in. Again, I'm not so sure how far in or out it goes. It seems like it's on there now. It's another chain for going through here, probably ought to clean off. But anyway, I did have to push that one more time, one ridge over on that pulley wheel there, and again, it might have come out because of me tugging on it and messing with it, or who knows what. So what happened when I first turned it on was it blew the circuit breaker 3 times in a row. Thought I'd burned my motor out. So I took it apart, and the only thing I could find that was a problem seemed to be the lever arm here had come on the outside, the tracking arm or idler shaft or whatever they call it on the parts list, tensioning arm of the chain. It'd come on the outside of the chain and wedged it in here between the gearbox and the tensioning arm. The chain had got caught in there. The good news is it didn't burn the motor out. The other thing I found out is you have to have the top on in order to start it again. I had the top off trying to start it, and it wouldn't start at all, wouldn't reset. There's a screw apparently in the top right. It goes through the little metal plate on top that has to be screwed in or the machine won't turn on. So what I've tried to do is I put an extra spacer washer back behind the right cog there, but there's a little play in this roller bar that goes in and out a little bit, and that might be part of the problem. I put an extra washer in there. I bought some extra spring, external snap rings. There's a site called replacement.com that has a lot of the parts, has all the parts. They've got a parts diagram, and they shipped it really quick in just a few days, and just a buck or two, you know, for the extra parts. I wish I'd gotten an extra spring here too on the tensioner arm, but I'm going to hook that up and see if it works better now. I looked back at my original video, and I think I might have found the problem. This sprocket has a ridge, and apparently that looked like it was flat against the machine. The flat part was facing out, which is the opposite side where the pulley arm is. But anyway, so I'm going to try to reinsert this. I must have got my chain switched backwards and put the rim part here on the inside against the machine and see if that tracks better, because I did put it back together and ran it just now, and again the tensioning arm here was wedging. It was too far out from the chain. It was wedging against the chain. So I'm going to try it with the ridge facing in. I guess when you take it off, keep good track of which side it's on. But when I look back at my previous video, it looked like it was probably this flat side the flat side here goes out versus that ridge. So that might push the chain a little further out, hopefully. So mystery solved. The sprocket for the chain was in the reverse position. The flat side should be out on these two wheels, and I must have got it switched backwards between the time I took it out and put it back. And on the opposite side, it looks like it's the opposite. They got the ridges on the outside. But then when I put this flat side back on, the tensioning arm or idler shaft, whatever you want to call this, it does stay on track here. So there is a front and a back side to these sprockets on the chain. Make sure you get the flat side on this side, the gearbox side of the machine facing out. Now it's tracking. The other side's tracking even though it's the reverse. But I think I better go back and look through the video and make sure that the ridge on that sprocket goes on the outside on the reverse side. But it's running good now. So this is about a 12 5/8 wide board, and it handled it quite well. I did notice that it's different. The roller, before I would use my cranking wheel to tell where I'm set. When the rollers came down, they start to move up the red indicator flag. But on this one, the cutter head must be sitting significantly higher than the roller, so I had to keep cranking down further than I normally would. But it was significantly quieter than the previous planer head, and it gave a pretty smooth cut here. But again, this is a very short board, so I don't know, you know, snipe with longer boards, we'll have to find out. But it handled the entire board. I did have the lines drawn from one side to the other, and it seems smoother than the previous planer. I don't see any ridges or anything. I feel a little bit of something in here. Yeah, there's a little bit of ridge in there. Not sure if that was from before. This is a glue board, actually, two sides together, but it cut quite well and it's quieter. So I guess the take-home points would be maybe do it all in one day. I broke mine up over a couple weeks because I was in the middle of a real estate deal, and when I put that sprocket back on backwards, it just didn't track and it jammed up. I'm lucky I didn't have more problems than I did. But it seems to work quite good. I'm just going to have to change the way I crank down the wheel now that the cutter head's sitting higher than the rollers, because I used to use that as just 3 cranks to tighten until it started short, and then 3 back off, then put the board under, then go back down 3. This time didn't work. I had to go almost 3.5 before I caught the I don't use the Wixley angle gauge, but I might have to start doing that.